Hey, it's Mazzy, and welcome back. This is a hybrid video, Memories of a Vinyl Junkie, a series that I haven't done in a while, literally. And I have showcased a lot of memories of myself growing up in San Francisco during a really amazing time. But this is also a response video. This is a response video to Andrew at Parlogram Records, who just literally this morning, as I'm recording this, posted a video of Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. I think it came out the end of May in the UK, but in America, it came out on a Thursday, June 1st, 1967. And I was just about to turn 13 years old that August. And then bar mitzvah in September 9th of 1967 in San Francisco. But it was a great video. There's a link below to Andrew's channel. If you haven't watched it, you owe yourself Parlogram auctions. And what's nice about him, he's completely the opposite of me. He's well scripted, very articulate, very, I was going to say British, but I think he's Belgium. Are you Belgium, Andrew? He's been very generous in reciprocating, making a few comments on my videos. I've responded to him. I'd love to meet him sometime. But anyway, he did this video about the reaction of Sergeant Pepper in 1967. And what a time it was. And he did invite viewers to comment and tell their stories and share their opinion if they were there or the first time they listened or got into that album, Sergeant Pepper. Now, I have discussed this album ad nauseum on several videos over the years, but I've never really done a video just about my experience in detail. So that's what this is about, Memories of a Vinyl Junkie, pretty much around that time of June 1st, 1967. And I have very, very vivid memories, and I have the proof of the pudding here. I'm going to go through these. I'm not going to get in detail of every pressing. I probably have 25, 30 pressings of Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band. It is definitely, literally the most important record ever made. When it came out, it changed everything. And if you weren't there, you don't know. And what's great about that video that Andrew did from Parlogram Auctions, he quoted reviews, other celebrities and artists, fan responses, that famous clip from Dick Clark where people thought, the mustaches, what the hell is that, when Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane came out. Now remember, Strawberry Fields, Penny Lane came out earlier in the year, were recorded for what would become Sgt. Pepper, but not released as a single. And after that last concert in San Francisco, which I can't talk about now because it's so emotional, that I missed on Monday night, August 29th, 1966, when they played Candlestick Park, and my mother saying, you can go next year. That's another story for another day. It's in my videos. Search it out. So I didn't see the Beatles, but then they kind of disappeared. And remember, they were putting out 2 to 3 albums a year and singles and things, year in, year out, since 1964 in America, and of course, 62, 63 in the UK. So when Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane dropped as singles, and all of a sudden there were mustaches and the psychedelic clothing, and I was so excited about it. But think about this. Okay, I am 12 going on 13 in San Francisco. I've told stories about riding my bike to Golden Gate Park, seeing soon after this, the Jefferson Airplane and the Grateful Dead. That didn't happen yet. But that year, I got Surrealistic Pillow. I got the Doors album. I was immersed into the sounds of San Francisco, the psychedelia, a certain maturity of music that just wasn't Love Me Do and I Want to Hold Your Hand and even Paul River and the Raiders and that whole thing. It was getting deeper, and I was fortunate enough to have access and listening to those first Grateful Dead records. Well, that would be 67 too, or coming up later, Country Joe and the Fish. But hearing these bands play in Golden Gate Park as a kid. So I remember that day. It was a Thursday. Now, I don't remember the detail of if I went right after school or during school on lunch hour. I don't remember when, but there was a local music store they had guitars and drums and records and microphones. And we would hang out there literally almost every day after school. And I got my first amplifier there, my first good amplifier. I would buy a harmonica there. I would buy records there when I saved my allowance and could buy records, or sometimes when I can convince my mother to take me to the store and she would buy me a record, and built my collection. And it's all this now, and it's all this. So Andrew talks about these stories and talks to fans and their first impressions of this album. But let me set the stage here. I remember going into this music store, and literally they just were opening a box of the Sgt. Pepper record, and a box of 25 records, I imagine, in those days. And of course, a mono and a stereo would be in separate boxes. And I don't specifically recall if I thought about getting the mono, just because in those days, mono was $1 less, stereo was $1 more. And most of us didn't have good stereo systems, although at the end of 1964, my parents gave me my first record player. It was a pull-down Magnavox stereo with the pivot speaker. So I had a stereo in my room from Christmas, Hanukkah, 1964. And that album that my parents gave me along with that stereo was Beatles 65, closely equivalent to Beatles for Sale in the UK. But on that day, the box opened up, and I remember the guy, I think his name was Jim. I don't know why I remember that, but maybe not. Who was the manager of the store. It was a family-run mom and pop music store. He was handing out copies to people, and there were only about, I'm thinking there were 6 or 7 of us. It wasn't like a line of people. And I don't recall how I knew release date. In those days, I didn't know about release date. Was it a Thursday? Was it a Friday? We knew that years later it was Friday, then it switched to Tuesday, or it was Tuesday to Friday. I don't know. And I don't know how I found out, because Rolling Stone, had that started yet? I guess it had. We knew this was coming, and I think I read a review somewhere. But I was buying Beatle albums no matter what the review said or not. Anyway, I grabbed a copy. This is the exact copy. This is the one but look how great, look how I keep my records, right? The exact copy. I got a stereo copy. Of course, you know the album well. You know how great this album is. The original inner sleeve, the Capital Swirl label, and of course, first time I recall, the insert. I did over the years, when I worked in record stores, get extra inserts as records came back defective. We'd all pull these out, and I would grab these. So I think I got a bunch of them. Yes, at one point I did cut out the mustache. I'm not doing it for you on this video, but I got this home and I literally played it multi times in a row, and every day, over and over and over again. And I would, what the British say, I was gobsmacked. It was so different. Of course, Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane set the stage. And we knew how mature the Beatles were, or how different they were, how out there we were. Going back to Rubber Soul and seeing that, what I thought was a typo when it said George Harrison's sitar. I thought they misspelled it from guitar. And hearing the sitar for the first time on that album, then of course on Revolver, and then of course all over this record. Now, I was one who loved side 2, track 1, Within You, Without You, but I know a lot of people I knew didn't like that. They just didn't get this Indian music and the classical Western Eastern combination and overtones. I thought that was incredible. I love this record. Now, I loved it in stereo. I don't think I heard the mono record right away. I can't remember when I first heard the mono record, but mine was American copy. We all know, and I'll go through some of the pressings here. This was so different. Everyone had this record. Everyone followed the lyrics. I don't remember ever reading lyrics, looking at the cover, trying to figure out who all those people are, until years later did that diagram come out showing who every individual was. In June 1st, 1967. This was a game changer. There was a famous cover story in Time magazine review of this record, and I believe that's where rock criticism began. That was the first time rock records were seriously reviewed, aside from the kind of offbeat press and things. This was the first time the masses, the Beatles were on the cover. I think they were kind of a puppet illustration. I have that in my magazine collection somewhere. But this changed everything. There was so much to dive into. There was so much to experiment and learn about. Day in a Life to me is one of the most perfect records ever made. And every song here goes in and out. Now, since then, I know some people get tired of talking about Sgt. Pepper and it's overrated. But if you weren't there in 1967, this record was so different. This record changed everything. Some people didn't get it. Some people longed for the old Beatles, the Mop Tops. This was a mature album. Concept, not really. It started out as a concept album, but really, if you try to follow the concept, it falls apart after track 2. But everything is so good. The way it fused, the swirling organ tape loops that they used in Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite, the beautiful rock and roll of the song, title song, Sgt. Pepper, and just even the old style thing of When I'm 64, that sort of music hall ditty that McCartney wrote that he would write over and over again in different ways, harking back to the music hall sound. This record changed everything. And of course, at that point, it opened my ears to more experimental music, later avant-garde music, some classical music, all kinds of things this album turned me on to. It was so different at the time. I might come up with some other memories, but I'm going to go through this collection a little bit really quickly. So this was the first American mono copy I got. This was a copy a girlfriend, an old friend gave me just because she had a copy, another copy. She had an American copy. In the 70s, I would pick up different pressings because of the cover change. This is a special marble copy that came out in the 70s. This is a copy that when radio stations and would reservice record stores and promos, this is in the 70s, but this is a punched promo copy, not stamped at all, doesn't say promo, but basically a free copy that Capitol is giving out to reservice radio stations. Remember, this is way before the CD era, so radio stations, it would wear these records out, and the labels would reservice the stations. But this is a copy that came out with a rolled top case that came out in the States. The exact same time, the same design as the rolled top when the CDs first came out of the Beatles. They finally, in America, emulated the UK releases and put everything else. Now, Sgt. Pepper had always been the same in America and into the UK. The earlier albums, we know America had their own versions. But at that point, when CDs came out, America aligned with the UK. And that's a copy from that roll-up box. This is a copy of the later remix copy of Sgt. Pepper. This is also one, the single one and the double one with the hype sticker. This is another one, another one they keep putting out. This is the expanded edition, the double edition with extra outtakes and demos and basically the works in progress outtakes. This is one of several picture discs that came out of Sgt. Pepper. This is a French pressing. I have a French box set of the Beatles collection. Looks all the same, except it's French. Not sung in French, obviously. This is Odeon, Japan. You can see the little Odeon logo there. This is another one-off of the Beatles. This is 1970s. This is the EAS series. I don't recommend the sound of the EAS series. But of course, with the Obies, I collected them all. They were old, numbered, and they would put out both the American and the British editions of albums when they were different. Obviously, a Sgt. Pepper, it's just a one-off because of that. And that was a stereo version. This is the Mobile Fidelity edition, which doesn't even have the cover. I think these are a little too bloated. It's really unfortunate. There is a Mobile Fidelity UHQR that I do not have. I have heard it, and it is spectacular, but I don't have it, and now it's a $1,000 plus record, so I don't think I'm going to have it anytime soon unless someone wants to donate it to the channel. Now, this is my favorite mono copy. This is an original UK mono, and I finally understood why people praise the mono version of Pepper so much. In mono, it's more of a rockin' album. It's more spatial as stereo. I still prefer, personally, the stereo. Is it because that's the one I heard probably for the first 10 years, and I got into it and it enveloped me, and it emotionally just took me by storm. I just love it in stereo. But I enjoy this. I understand, that you hear these quotes from George Martin or John Lennon that you haven't heard Sgt. Pepper if you haven't heard it in mono. And I believe them. Of course, they're not wrong. But to me, the idea of psychedelic music in stereo swirling around your brain is it. Maybe it's because all those San Francisco psychedelic albums that were happening in '67 just really touched me. And living in that city, going through the Summer of Love, walking down Haight Street as a young kid in 1967 when they're selling the Berkeley Barb and the Oracle, the underground newspapers, and you could smell patchouli oil and pot and the poster mat and the psychedelic shop and all the stuff that was happening. Of course, the press latched on to the Summer of Love and the psychedelic stuff that was happening in San Francisco and on Hippie Hill on Golden Gate Park. I was born literally in a hospital on Standing Street, just 4 blocks up from Haight Street, looking over Golden Gate Park. And it was such a special time, such a special place. And I feel very fortunate enough to be brought up at this time in this place with that music. And the Beatles were the launching point back in 1964 of it. And again, when this album came out and I listened to it for the first time, I just couldn't believe it. And to this day, and obviously the artwork, I haven't even mentioned the artwork. Peter Blake put this together. Michael Cooper photographed it. He's a collage artist, an assemblage artist in the UK. I think he's Sir Peter Blake now. He's done record covers for not only the Beatles, but for The Who, for Paul Weather. Wonderful art piece. I've seen shows of his work, and and this whole thing too was a big part of the later Paul is dead rumor that was happening. Here's another copy, and at this point, I don't even know which copies they were, but I probably have 30 copies, and I didn't even take copies out of the mono box or the stereo box. So I just wanted to do a personal response to Andrew at Parlogram Records. As detailed he is with his presentations, I'm the opposite. I take a little more emotional, personal take on this music. So in closing, I just want to say I feel really blessed to have lived in that time, in that place, in San Francisco that was echoing what was happening in swingin' London in 1967. Even though I was a kid, barely 13, that summer of 1967, I really felt the colorful joy of that year and the music that was happening and all these amazing artists, musicians, bands really opening up their minds and their experiences to create these really amazing records. But Sgt. Pepper, it may not have been the first to experiment, but it was the one with the Beatles that really put rock and roll on the map as high art. And Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band is exactly that, an album of truly high art. Thanks for watching. Mazzy loves you.